will be a gay-centered, and this has to do with it being gay-centered, by the way, why this is so. Because it will be a gay-centering activity, the ICUP Advanced Training Program in Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis will not be a, quote, professional, unquote, training regime that is focused on the role of therapist with client or in any kind of professional sense. So this is not to deny professional implications of the training program, but that is not its job. Okay? And you notice there is a commonality maybe between a hetero approach and a professional attitude. And so this training program is not to be professional. The ICUP is not here to imitate other heterosexually oriented institutes. Our training program will, without excluding professional practice issues, be focused on the introvert and personal and interpersonal context, akin to initiatory induction into ancient mystery associations related to same-sex love, thus aiming to rebirth that hallowed homosexual tradition in a contemporary psychological form, thereby providing an ancient new opportunity for interested and eligible homosexuals and others today and into the foreseeable future. To further this resurrectional aim, the program will be structured around a small core training seminar, primarily concerned with experiential process, and a parallel reading, writing course of progressive self-study. The core seminar will itself be divided into 2 modules, each with an activities focus, and the course of study will include in-depth mastery of relevant gay, psychoanalytic, and Jungian literature. So there's a thumbnail sketch of what's in it. One aim of training will be the ability to grasp and compose gay-centered analytic, meaning Jungian psychology, at an advanced level of competence. Entry into the training program will be by application and interview. And eventually we would like to have the application not be where we start out with just inviting people, but we don't want to have it be that way. Eventually we want to have it where there's a time when people can apply to it, and whoever applies, and we pick from that. This is just a starter. We invited some folks. Entry into the training program will be by application and interview to determine eligibility, followed by the mutual signing of an agreement between the trainee and the institute. Requirements of training will be to be currently enrolled in or have previously completed an advanced course of education, preferably in psychology, not necessarily a degree, you notice, as required. To attend the core training seminar to be initially given twice monthly, and concurrently to be in advanced Uranian psychoanalytic psychotherapy or consultation at least once weekly. By the way, that last one, the advanced psychotherapy or consultation, implies one has been or is currently in non-advanced Uranian psychoanalytic psychotherapy. And that's the requirement was so ubiquitous, none of us had noticed to actually say that. Because they have to say that now. So this will have to be slightly amended to point that out. For your information, that statement ought to be slightly adjusted. Trainees must also make themselves available when called on to present at monthly Uranian Psychoanalytic Club meetings and for other requirements that may be developed, such as writing assignments in conjunction with core seminar activities, which will be published in an institute journal. We would very much like to start a journal of gay-centered psychological writing on this level. There will be no tuition fee for participation in this program. The advanced training program is to be organized and managed by an operations committee, which is made up, by the way, of just the 4 folks who are running each of the 2 modules of the core seminar. The advanced training program is to be organized and managed by an operations committee, to be overseen by the Institute Oversight Committee. The Oversight Committee is the group that really runs the Institute itself. Members of the operations committee will directly supervise the trainees in their development through monthly operation of the core seminar and other educational modes which may be developed as the program expands. The operations committee may designate one or more of the trainees to aid the committee in the operation of the core seminar, overall management of the other trainees and the program as indicated, while also participating in that program. Indeed, it is imagined that all early trainees will likely become involved in helping build the advanced training program, thus adding an extra dimension of meaning as this historic effort to grow the world's first homosexual psychoanalytic institute moves forward. It is anticipated that as the program matures, individual trainees will progress suitably. An evolution of an increasingly differentiated and substantial advanced training program will occur, including the stages of candidacy and new membership. So you have it, that's it. That's in order to get something down. And that's something that is in writing, not just words spoken, that locates this project. So obviously it implies an application to join the program, right, which you've all been busy concerned with. And then also, when we realized, we have an application, people apply, and if everyone's accepted, I'm going to take them in. Maybe we should have some form of agreement. And thus led to the consent that Doug will show. been sent to training at Doug will show. Okay? So perhaps Roger, give you a little time, to react on in terms of inviting you to share some too, as one of the co-producers of our program and operators of it. Perhaps you can take it over now and share with us the application form.
Okay. All right. Well, before I actually read it,
Please.
Let me
Sure, introduce yourself.
say hello. So one of the themes, Mitch, that you were evoking is this issue of subjectivity and how to be alive in one's individuality in the moment, in the felt moment. And so as I've been hanging out here and listening to you and trying to be present with myself, there's a whole range of challenges in terms of what it feels like to be in my body and how my body reacts to being alive here with you, Mitch, and with Doug, and with all of you, and how my subjectivity resonates through my body. There's kind of a paradox there of subjectivity as that, what you were calling being, that felt moment that is not body, but is felt through the body. So there's a paradox there around how to be alive in a body while also being, so to speak, spirit, how to be present in the felt moment, which is not limited to body, like mind is not limited to brain. So the first challenge is just sitting in this chair and the kind of a stiffness. So forgive me, I want to just get a little bit more. There's a need to be a good boy, to cooperate with mother. Part of my struggle around my subjectivity is how to feel separate and individual from my mother, because my mother did not allow for separateness. She did, because of how her own subjectivity and her own personhood was so crushed for a variety of reasons in terms of her own family trauma, sexism, what have you. She couldn't tolerate me feeling separate and distinct as an individual. So there was a constant pressure for me to conform to her experience. And then what happens for me through my own projections is then I play that out with others. So as Mitch, as you're speaking these really inspiring and wonderful ideas, there's a part of me that is constantly struggling as if you're my mother about, can I take in what you're offering? Can I take in the food that you're offering without being submerged by it? Because when my mother gave me food, it wasn't good food, it was her narcissism. It was this manic, as if artificial, pretend version of being a person. So this was the diet I was constantly fed, so there's a way that I'm used to taking in because of how she dressed this up as love. So as I hear you talking and invoke, it was so wonderful how you were invoking love, and I want to say how much I'm in love with Galen. And even to say that, I can feel my mother complex. I can feel my internalized mother saying, that's not about me! That's not about me! So there's this constant kind of nightmarish quality of trying to feel separate in myself. And as I'm trying to describe, it makes it difficult when there is goodness to take that in, because I have to guard against kind of that horrific narcissism that I got from my mother. Now, when it comes to reading this application form, there's a big struggle around words and being present, reading. In my house as a kid, there was lots of writing, lots of typing. Saturday night at the Kaufman house was my mother in front of her typewriter, manual typewriters, and my father downstairs in front of his typewriter. So on the surface, there was this kind of obsessional love of words, but again, it had this artificial or as-if quality where the words weren't really appreciated. They were used for defensive purposes to pretend that something of meaning was being said, when in fact most of what my parents wrote was not meaningful at all. My dad was in advertising, and my mother wrote history. It was interesting what you were saying about history being written by the victors. So my mother was a historian and attempting to be a feminist, and yet it was all very, again, had this disembodied quality. So on the one hand, I was grown up in an environment of words, and some pretend valuation around words. On the other hand, because there was this other narcissistic level of business going on where I was being controlled around my mother's words in terms of how she related to me, her person in terms of how she related to me defensively, then to be with words and to read a document, there's a risk that I'm going to constantly dissociate as I'm reading. So I'm going to do my best and try to be compassionate with myself around the challenge of doing that. Maybe before I actually read this, I'll say a couple more thoughts I have to riff off of what you were saying, Mitch, in terms of why have an application for a training program. You know, as Mitch explained, we've sent this out. We've invited a set group of people for now to apply because of the practical limits, as you were describing, Mitch, in terms of what we can handle. So why didn't we just invite them to start the training program? Why have an application? Why go through? Why put out this 6-document training application packet and have the people who have been invited go through a process around applying? And you'll see as I read this to you what that process is going to be. And an initial thought I have about this, and maybe I'll flesh it out a little bit more after I read this, is because of how Mitch has described this, what we're trying to do, which is to create a container, a gay-centering container. And I purposely use that idea of gay-centering instead of gay-centered in this idea that we want to increasingly focus on the meaning and value and symbolic nature of gayness. And so we need to create a container, and by nature a container, you have to kind of pass through a narrow passage to get into a container. So it seems to be important that people entering the training program go through a kind of an experience, an initiation, if you will, of passing through a narrow passage, of some effort, of some struggle around, in a sense, co-creating with those of us who are going to be facilitating the program to help create that program. And maybe I'll say a few more words about that after I try to read this.
Roger, can you pause before you start?
Sure.
I want to change.
Okay. So this is called Application for Admission, Advanced Training Program in Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis. Founded in 2005, the Institute for Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis, ICUP, has been established by a psychologically minded alliance of gay liberation activists. Notice there that doesn't say an alliance of psychotherapists. There's an increasing emphasis, as Mitch was saying, in a psychological way. Established by a psychologically minded alliance of gay liberation activists to foster the refinement and application of a rigorous, depth psychological approach to homosexual self-realization, as inspired by affirmative research into the profoundly meaningful, numinous archetypal roots of same-sex romantic love and modern gay personhood. That paragraph is actually taken from the Institute's statement of purpose, but it seemed appropriate to start off the application as a summary of the Institute and the purpose of what the training program will be. Now, this paragraph you may recognize aspects of from what Mitch just read. Because a serious training program must be at the core of any psychoanalytic institute's successful functioning and perpetuation, the ICUP has moved to initiate, beginning in August 2011, the Advanced Training Program in Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis, and its successful completion will lead to certification in the practice of contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis and membership in the ICUP. Now it gets more specific to the application. application to and participation in the advanced training program is to be considered an integral part of your gay-centered individuation process. So not something that's just like the school you go to, not that at all, but rather something that's really deeply integrated and an, if you will, organic part of self-development. For this application, you will be asked to communicate about your background, your experience, and your goals from a gay-centering attitude